So what is going on, everybody? Fernando Silva here with another video, and today we have an exciting one. It's now springtime, or we're getting to springtime, and usually around this time Apple does have a March event where they do release a bunch of new Apple products, usually in the iMac realm, maybe an iPhone SE and things like that. But what I'm most interested in, and Apple is rumored to have their March event on March 8th, from all the leaks and rumors that we've heard. Apple has not announced it yet, but what I'm most excited for is that the iPad Air 5 is all but confirmed to be released, or at least announced, on the March 8th event. And that's what we're going to go over today. We're going to talk about all the leaks, all the rumors, all the expectations of that iPad Air 5, and why I personally think, and what I actually got recently, that makes me think that this iPad Air 5 is going to be coming out in the next 2 weeks or so. So without further ado, let's talk about the iPad Air 5 and exactly what's going on. Let's get it. So the first piece of evidence that we have about the iPad Air 5 releasing in March of this year is the fact that Apple releases their iPad Airs in 18-month schedule increments, right? And they've been following this schedule since about the iPad Air 3. And then also on top of that, Apple never releases the iPad Air side by side to the iPad Pros because they know that they're so similar in actual function and what they can do that they can't release them at the same time. So you can't expect the iPad Pros to be released in March with the iPad Air. That's another reason why I think we're going to get the iPad Air 5 in this March event, and then probably the iPad Pros in the fall, and then again to follow the 18-month increment with the iPad Pros. So the iPad Pro and the iPad Air will not be launched side by side, which makes me think that Apple's not going to wait until the fall to release the iPad Air, because that'll be 2 years from the last iPad Air release, and we're probably going to get it, like I said, in this March 8th event, which is great to see. And then another really big glaring situation that we have with the iPad Air is just where it sits in the iPad lineup currently, right? It's kind of sitting in limbo, especially since the iPad Mini 6 was released earlier last year. And the main reason why it's sitting in limbo is because of what you get for the price with the iPad Air. So the iPad Air 4, which you can go on Apple's website today and order and pick up on the same day, is now starting at $600 for the 64GB model. But with that, you only get a 7-megapixel selfie camera, you get a older camera sensor in the rear that doesn't have optical image stabilization, it doesn't have a flash, and then you also still have that A14 Bionic chip, which at this point is about a year old, or almost 2 years old now at this point. So having that chipset and all that in that iPad Air sitting above the iPad Mini just feels weird in my opinion, right? So having a $600 iPad that's less capable than that $500 iPad, it just doesn't really make sense. Now I know that the iPad Mini 5 is a smaller form factor and things like that. That iPad Mini 6 has 5G, has that 12-megapixel selfie camera with center stage, has the rear camera sensor with the flash, and it also carrying the latest and greatest A15 Bionic chip in that iPad Mini for a smaller price. And now again, I know it's a smaller form factor and it's technically a different device, but I don't know anybody right now that would need to go out and get the iPad Air 4. In my opinion, I usually steer people either to the iPad Mini, or if they want to shell out a little bit more money, just go with the iPad 11-inch Pro, because the iPad Air 4 is going to be outdated very, very soon. So really the only person that should be getting the iPad Air 4 today is somebody that really needs a 10.9-inch display that can still work with a Magic Keyboard and doesn't want to shell out the extra $200 for the 11-inch iPad Pro. But even then, if somebody really wants that form factor in the 11-inch, I'll just tell them to go get a refurbished 2020 iPad Pro or a refurbished 2018 iPad Pro that still works with a Magic Keyboard. So again, that iPad Air 4 right now in that lineup just feels weird. It doesn't feel right. It feels like it's out of spot. But Apple isn't known to just remove a product without replacing it. Also, they're not known for lowering the price of a product without replacing it or bringing a newer one. So no way Apple lowers that price until that new iPad Air 5 does release. So those are the two main reasons why I think this iPad Air 4 will be released, or at least announced, in the next 2 weeks, right? We have the increments of when they're usually released in that 18-month increment, and the fact that they never release alongside an iPad Pro, and then also the fact that right now it's sitting in limbo in the iPad lineup because it just doesn't make sense to purchase that particular iPad at that price point with that feature set. So those are the reasons why I think it's going to be coming out really soon. But now let's talk about what to expect with this iPad Air 5, because again, if Apple's going to replace that iPad Air 4, it better be a substantial upgrade and give people a reason to upgrade from the 4 to the 5. But let's check out all the leaks and rumors so far about this new iPad Air. So from everything that I've personally seen and all the leaks and rumors, the form factor is going to be identical. We're still going to have that same exact LCD 10.9-inch display on the front. We were rumored to get some OLED displays, but that was pushed back to 2023 because of the fact that we have all these shortages going on in the manufacturing. So we're probably not going to get OLED displays on this new iPad Air 5. But again, that would have been the first iPad to sport an OLED display, because keep in mind, the iPad Pros don't have OLED. They have mini LED, which is a different technology. But again, from everything that I've seen, Apple's going to keep it very simple, and they're going to improve on the things that are most important to the consumer, right? So first thing, they're going to upgrade the cameras on the actual iPad Air 5. So they're going to include that new 12 megapixel selfie camera. They're going to include center stage. They're probably going to upgrade the rear camera, add the flash that's on the iPad mini, but I also think that the rear camera is actually going to be a dual sensor camera, and they're going to take the iPhone 13 camera sensors and then maybe the iPad Pro camera sensors, kind of mix them up, and then put them on the iPad Air 5. Minus the LiDAR scanner. So it's going to be kind of that same situation, and Max Tech has a great render that I'll put on the screen right now of what it's going to look like. So it's going to look exactly like the iPhone 13 models, not the iPhone 13 Pro. So it's going to have the dual cameras with a flash, but without the LiDAR scanner. So that is what I think is going to happen on the rear. So we're going to upgrade the cameras on the iPad Air 5. We're also finally going to give it 5G capability, because again, that's the only iPad currently that doesn't support 5G. Actually, fact check me in the comments. I'm not sure if the iPad 9th generation supports 5G, but I know that the iPad mini and the iPad Pros do support 5G, but the iPad Air 4 currently only supports LTE 4G. So Apple's got to include 5G in there. Even though it's probably going to be a $200 upgrade to include 5G, it'll probably be an option on the iPad Air 5. And then lastly, we're probably going to get the A15 Bionic chip ported over onto this iPad Air 5 just to make sure that it fits correctly in the lineup, because you can't have an iPad that's more expensive than the iPad mini with the A15, and A15 is literally more powerful than the iPad Air 4 at $100 less. So those are all the things that are going to come to the new iPad Air 5. So it's not going to be a crazy redesign. It's going to be very, very familiar. It's probably going to come in the same colorways that are very colorful, very poppy, kind of pastel-y. And the only things you're going to see upgraded are the internal chip, the 5G capability. We're going to have the new camera sensors on both the front and the back. We're probably going to get quad speakers instead of the dual speaker stereo sound, because the iPad Air 4 currently has 4 grills, but it only has 2 stereo speakers. They're probably going to add in quad speakers to make it a little bit louder and make it a little bit of a differentiating factor from the iPad mini, because the iPad mini only has 2 speakers total, 1 on each side. And then lastly, from the price standpoint, it's probably going to start at that same $600 price point. I'm hoping, and I don't know if this is probably going to happen, because I don't know if Apple's going to give us this, but I'm hoping that the new base model starts at 128 gigs instead of 64 gigs, because 64 gigs is just not enough in 2022, especially on a $600 device. So if Apple gives us 128 gigs, that would just be the cherry on top on that iPad Air 5. But then the last thing that I want to mention, I'm going to show you guys on the screen right now, is I actually got an email recently from a company that wants to send over iPad Air 5 cases that basically asked me like, hey Fernando, are you going to be purchasing the new iPad Air 5? Because we have a bunch of new cases, a keyboard case, a slim folio case, a foldable case, that all are going to be compatible with that iPad Air 5. And if you see in the renders or in the images, it's a square cutout on the back. It's no longer just a single cutout for a single camera. So I'm thinking we're going to get a square-like module on the back for the camera. And again, I think companies now have the spec of these iPad Air 5 models, and they're going to start ramping up their production on these cases and accessories and things like that for the iPad Air 5. And that to me was a cherry on top, or that final kind of like yes, this is happening moment where I'm like, oh wow, maybe this iPad Air 5 is really happening sooner rather than later. But those are all the leaks and rumors that we found. So now we know why I think it's going to be coming in March. All the leaks and rumors of what to expect. So same price point, same form factor, new cameras, new chip, 5G capable, maybe some new speakers. But the screen technology itself is going to be exactly the same. So it's just going to be a kind of lesser iPad Pro that'll get you 99% of the way there to the iPad Pro. But that's usually the story of the entire iPad lineup, is just like, how close can you get to the iPad Pro lineup at a certain price point? And normally, even at the cheapest price point, you can get 95% of the way there. But that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you made it to the end, leave a little dolphin in the comments below so I know that you guys made it to the end. And leave a comment down below. Which iPad do you guys currently use? Are you waiting for the iPad Air 5? Is this kind of like your sweet spot in terms of what iPad to get? Because it can do more than just a simple tablet that's there for media consumption, but it's not as powerful or as expensive as the iPad Pros. So I'm curious to know who this iPad Air 5 is going to be for, and who iPad Air 5 users are going to be. So leave a comment down below. Are you going to get it? Are you coming from an iPad Air currently? What is your use case for your iPad? Always curious to know, everybody. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And until next time, everybody, I'm excited for this thing, and let's hope March 8th marks the day that the iPad Air 5 is released. I'm out of here.